Okay, we're watching Oppenheimer. This is finally here. Christopher Nolan, the savant. Super stoked for this, man. Start out here with this big explosion. Cillian Murphy's like Mount Rushmore for me. I love everything he does.
We imagine a future. And our imaginings horrify us. They won't fear it until they understand it. And they won't understand it until they've used it.
His face is so worried, like just, I mean, imagine, you know?
You tell the stress.
Theory will take you only so far.
Theory will only take you so far. Like, just in this trailer alone, he's just dimes after dimes with these lines.
I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon.
The wherewithal, you know?
But we have no choice.
There's always a choice. Hans Zimmer.
Is anyone
Huey!
Huey!
ever going to tell the truth about what's happening here?
I have chills right now. Like,
Dude.
oh, I mean, to be the person to press that button. God. All right.
Wild.
Man, so that was Oppenheimer. Just clearly, this thing is going to be a spectacle.
Yeah.
My God. How did you guys feel about the trailer? Like, what was your initial reaction?
Adam?
For the first thing that had me hyped was obviously the subject matter.
Yep.
When I heard they're making it, I'm like, all right, let me watch like some other movies. And there's like no movies on the Manhattan Project, which is crazy.
Insane.
Wow.
Because the story by itself is crazy. And then Oppenheimer, I didn't know a lot about him, but like I've been researching him, and his life is kind of bananas. So,
Damn.
and with the cast and the director, like the story is gonna blow people's minds. I think like people aren't expecting the story to be as crazy as it's gonna be.
We didn't get to introduce Adam here. He is our local historian here. That's why we call him the professor, because he just got all those facts. Is there anything about Oppenheimer that we should know maybe going into this, or like just the Manhattan Project in general that like maybe this trailer doesn't show, or that the general public doesn't know?
Ooh. Two things off the top of my head. People think of nerds as being like not with the ladies.
Yes.
But I feel like if you're that god tier scientist,
Yes.
it's the opposite. You have nothing but ladies.
Oh yeah.
Like Einstein.
Einstein is Mr. Riz.
Hawking.
Definitely. Yeah.
And Oppenheimer too. I'm not gonna ruin it for anybody.
Yeah.
But like, just don't get attached to all the females is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Depending on how far they show it.
God.
And then Los Alamos.
He's a Casanova.
Yeah, man, he don't play no game. And
Didn't
then Los
expect that.
Alamos, where they did the research.
Yep.
I don't know what it looked like off the top of my head, but that looked way too small. It was a huge. I didn't mean to swear. It was a huge city in the middle of nowhere
Yeah.
that just like sprung up overnight. 90% of the budget for the Manhattan Project was just in building stuff.
Wow. So they just pretty much found like basically the desert or whatever and just started building like a little city.
Like an Area 51 type thing. Like they're like, all right, we're gonna go to remote middle of nowhere. We're gonna work.
It's because I've always wondered, I'm like, okay, so if this thing is super reactive and like it's a huge deal, obviously, like how does one even build a nuclear bomb? Like so is that's what I was expecting to see in this trailer, in this film. Like, are we gonna see behind the scenes of how it's all made, or is it gonna be more like the political decision to make that?
Sure. I mean, I feel like one thing people shouldn't be looking like going into the movie expecting is like action, like Dunkirk or like Dark Knight or Tenet or anything like that, because it's all math equations and just like, should we drop this weapon that's going to forever change planet Earth? So it's a lot of more of like emotional tension than like action.
Definitely. I could see this being sort of adjacent to Interstellar. Like, I know Tenet, you just use Tenet as an example, but I feel like Tenet is sort of adjacent to Interstellar in the sense it's talking about these bigger concepts and ideas, but then Tenet had a little bit more punch to it because it was action, whereas this we're just going to get sort of into the nitty-gritty of like how they decided to do this, why they decided to do this, and then the ramifications, because in this trailer we're seeing Oppenheimer, he's stressed out and he's just like, they have no idea that like there's no turning back from this. Like, once this happens, society will change forever. And to be the person giving the equations, doing the math, like, it's sort of one of these things that he's like saying, he's like, is it necessary? Or not that it's necessary, that it is necessary to get the job done, right? At the time, was America the first to really have nuclear bombs?
So, fun fact. Buckle up, because we got fun facts coming in
that's what we're here
hot
for.
and heavy. The only reason why we started a nuclear program is because I think it was Enrico Fermi, said the Nazis were creating their own. And if we don't beat them to it, they're going to have a nuke before us. So him, along with like a bunch of other physicists, wrote a letter to FDR being like, you need to get on this. But none of them had any weight behind their name because like no one knows who Enrique Fermi is. So they got Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein wrote FDR a letter being like, you have to create the nuclear program to beat the Nazis before they create it.
Right.
So
oh wow,
it wasn't like our idea to do it. We're the only country to ever use it.
See, and even that, I did not know that. I like, because it's interesting, like when you're learning about this when you're in middle school and high school, it's like, okay, yeah, history and it's a bomb, but like I feel like as you get older, you really realize the magnitude of what this weapon is. This is like, they call it a weapon of mass destruction because that's what it is. Thalia, what was your reaction to the trailer? There was anything that stood out to you or anything that made you sort of go, wow, I want to see this movie?
I feel like now, I think me and Adam were talking about this, just like nowadays, a lot of just like biopics or like movies about people behind certain like events or projects are now coming out. So it's like something you don't think about until like it's in front of you. You're like, oh, I didn't even know this person existed until, well, obviously I knew who he was, but I didn't even think of a movie even being created, like being around him and his story and just like his involvement would be something that could be so interesting to watch.
Totally, because and that's a great point, because it's sort of like when we have these biopics, it's always like you have FDR's story, right? And then you'll like weave in the nuclear parts and all that, or the war, but someone who is a scientist really doesn't get that shine. I'm really excited to see just everyone involved in this project. Now, when this came out, you look at the cast here, you got Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, Jack Quaid, Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, Rami Malek, my guy. Literally got an autograph right there. You know, Josh Peck. They pulled Josh Peck out of the woodwork to get this done. Rob Morgan. You got a Safdie brother in this. Like, Ben Affleck is in this. It's just, the names go on and on and on.
Holy cow.
You know, it's just insane. So, like, to me, when I heard that the cast that was announced, I was like, okay, I think this is, like, potentially gonna be Nolan's, like, magnum opus. I think, like, he is putting his, like, whole heart into this. I'd be super curious to know, like, what he thinks is his, like, best of the best work. Gary Oldman's in this. I didn't even, like, I mean, this is just, you know? How did you guys feel about that? Like, just getting this announcement of all these big names. Were you thinking, like, this is about to be, like, the biggest spectacle of 2023?
Honestly, I was just like, this is, like, a lot of people. Like, how are we all going to balance each other out, you know? But I think with, you know, whoever's directing the casting of this, you know, has, like, a picture in their head of how they're all going to be portrayed within this storyline. But it's just crazy.
Yeah, I think too. It's like when Christopher Nolan gives you the call, you're like, dude, I'll play anyone, you know. So I think it's one of those things where you're like, I just want to be a part of this, you know. If Christopher Nolan called me and was like, hey Tyrone, I just want you to open the door for Oppenheimer's character, I'm doing it. I'm flying to L.A.
We're going.
I'm telling work I can't come in. I'm sick, whatever. Like, it's gonna happen. Adam, what did you think about the cast?
I just based off of kind of quickly reviewing everyone, I feel like the cast is star-studded. Like, I don't think, based off of who people are playing and kind of the story vibe, like the beats I feel like they're going to hit, I feel like a lot of the bigger name actors are only going to be in it for like a scene or two.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Robert Downey Jr.'s character is going to be in it a lot. But I feel, I mean...
It's interesting you say that because
give you everything they got.
Yeah, I thought I read something where Nolan or one of the casting directors was saying, like, this is one of the best Robert Downey Jr. has, like, put on for some time. So I'll be curious to see if he's in it, because I think it's about 2.5 hours, the film. I'll be curious to see even if he's in there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, if it has that sort of powerful scene or moment. Because sometimes just delivering a monologue or being a part of it will really land or hit a point. So, and to me, to pick these names, these are like big names. Like, the majority of these people have been nominated for an Oscar or an Emmy. So I think it's very intentional, as Thalia was saying, like, they have a vision behind it. And I think as we kind of get more information and things come out, we'll start to see, like, why people were selected. But this cast is almost too big to fail in my head. Like, it's like you have people who really dive into their characters. So, man, I'm very excited about this.
Me too.
They dropped like a behind the scenes, like a sneak peek of what Robert Downey Jr. looks like in the movie.
Ooh, we'll have to put that on the screen.
And it looks good. Like, the makeup's legit. Like, it's like he's gonna have his part will be big, but I don't think, with the exception of like Matt Damon.
Yeah,
I feel like Josh Peck and Dennis Quaid's son, Huey, I feel like are going to be in it a lot. But, like, I don't think he'll be in it a lot, but I feel like
wait a
the
second.
part he'll be in, like you said, is going to be,
I'm
like,
sorry.
Dang.
You just dropped the bomb. Dennis Quaid is Jack... I did not know they were related.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check now.
No, they are.
Okay.
No, they definitely are. Now that you said that, I'm like, wow.
His mom's
Meg Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Man.
Fitting image of them too.
Yeah. Fun fact: Meg Ryan and I have the same birthday. But no, yeah. So you think that Matt Damon and Cillian are gonna be basically, and Josh Peck are gonna be like the big names of this story?
And Huey, whoever I can't forget his name.
Jack
Quaid. Thank you. I think there will be. They're going to be big. Matt Damon plays the man who's in charge of the Manhattan Project, like from the military perspective.
Yep.
Oppenheimer ran the science perspective. Peck ran the Trinity test. That guy he plays. Kenneth Brandridge ran the Trinity test, and he's going to have the best quote in the movie. I don't want to steal it from anyone and ruin it.
Ooh.
But he's going to have a fire quote. People are going to be like, oh my God.
It's just to see Josh Peck in a role like this.
I know.
I don't think I've seen him. I mean, when Disney stars, Nick stars, they make those jumps, I try to follow it to be like, you know, all right, they're starting to take that next step in their career. I don't think he's really had anything like that where, like, has he? Maybe I've missed
so.
It. Like, so this is sort of a big jump.
All I can think of is in How I Met Your Father. It's the only thing I can think of that he's done.
Yeah. I mean, I know he's done a lot of voiceover things, and, like, you know, he's so personable. Like, when you see him on the internet or TikTok or whatever, he's so likable. And sometimes they will cast someone based on just their personality. It just fits. So I definitely think that is probably going to play a factor, but we will see. We shall see.
We shall see.
I really thought the music was, like, intense and it had me going as well. Hans Zimmer always does that. Like, how did you guys feel about the music? Did you feel the music was, like, were you picking up the vibes of, like, wow, this is intense, like we're going to war? Or was it more intense, like we might be making a bad decision?
I had a feeling it was, like, or for me, it felt like scary, but like
Yeah.
scary, like we're doing something groundbreaking, kind of scary, like this is gonna change a lot of things, type of scary.
Yeah.
Like that's how I felt.
Like tense. It was very
Yeah,
tense.
especially with seeing the fiery stuff, you're like, okay, this
Right.
is this is a little worrisome right
Yeah. And
here.
what about you, Adam? How did you feel?
Yeah, just like we're going kind of cliche where no man's gone before. And
Yes.
I don't know if we should even do it, but
Y-
here we go anyway.
Yeah. One step for man, one step for mankind. All right. Did you have any other little facts or anything you want to throw in there, or
Ooh, I peruse my notes real quick.
go ahead? Yeah.
So Oppenheimer hated the bomb. Spoiler, they use it and they create it. They use it twice. They drop it first in Hiroshima. 3 days later, they drop it in Nagasaki. And Oppenheimer, ever since, like, has been anti-war, anti-nuclear, peripheral, spreading into other countries.
Yep.
And he died super young. He died at like 63.
Oh wow.
A lot of those guys who worked on that project are going to die young from cancer.
Right. Makes sense.
They show a scene with them blast.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's an atomic blast, and they're literally just behind a plank of wood.
Mm.
Like, yeah, they're cutting edge in the fact no one created a nuclear bomb before, but there's still so much they don't know.
Right.
And it's crazy. And, like, all of them are going to die from cancer so young, and it's so sad.
Yeah.
And another thing, like, the Trinity, like, no one knew it was going to work. They dropped back in 1945, they dropped $2 billion in 45 money. And today, that's the equivalent of $24 billion.
That's insane.
And no one knew it was going to work.
It's just crazy.
They built 3. 1 was the test, and 2 they used. They wouldn't have had another for like another 6 months.
Yeah.
Japan had no way of knowing that. They probably, I don't know if they would have surrendered had they known that, but no one knew it was going to happen. Like, no one's like, oh yeah, this thing was going to work. Like, no. Even when after the test and they dropped it, they still had no way. Like, they thought it would just drop to the, drop in the middle of the ocean and that'd be it. Like, it would detonate.
When it dropped, did they actually know how big it was, or did they like, or like, was that the goal to like kind of force it that much, or was it a shock to them then?
So when they dropped it. It's hard to contextual. We might have to do another one after the movie to talk about it.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
It's hard to describe the United States' thoughts on this. Because you look at it today, dropping the nuke on civilians is crazy.
Right.
But we'll get into that if we do the follow-up. But they dropped it 50 miles above the city to maximize the explosion down below. And they told them as soon as you drop the bomb, like, bank left, like your life depended on it because you're going to get caught up in the explosion. And they have, they told like the rear gunner to film it while you're driving away. Yeah. But the pilots reported feel like tasting lead in their mouth as soon as the bomb detonated. And they were miles away from it.
Wow.
So even though, they're up in the sky miles away, they were still feeling the after effect.
Man.
It's credited with 100,000 deaths, but
wait, say that again? Say that number again?
Cancer. So it's about 200,000 for both cities, about 100,000 each.
Insane.
But they don't even cancer. How do you magnify cancer if someone gets it 5 years after the fact? You know what I mean? So those are just estimates.
Man, that's horrible. Absolutely horrible. Yeah, I mean, I imagine we're gonna get sort of like a Top Gun sort of scene, where they're trying to get away from it and it's intense. But yeah, I would imagine there's nothing you can do in that situation other than
absolutely
pray to God at that point. But
haul out of there.
It is really unimaginable to think about that happening today, but obviously during times of war and fear and all that, it was sort of this I think nowadays when we think about politics and war, there's sort of this international perspective that we have, and it's we are all one, and I think that's sort of self-protection too, because it's you don't want any other nation to sort of because all it takes is one nation to go all right, there's no morality, and then once that happens, society's done, and I think during the time it was hey, what's going on in Japan, not our problem. And now that we're so connected, like I like whenever you see these things on the internet where it's like protest or someone getting gunned down or their government is restricting them, like it's almost like they're an American to you. You instantly feel like for them, and you're like, this is not right. Do you know if that's how the citizens felt? Like what, like the aftermath of how people felt about the nuke? Was it more like, woohoo, USA, or was it more like, this is not right?
It was. Again, it's hard to contextualize it like 80 years after the fact.
Yeah.
But after Pearl Harbor, right? That's the deadliest attack on U.S. soil by a foreign country until 9/11, right? We're angry at Japan.
Yeah.
We've been fighting with Japan for 5 years.
Yeah.
No more soldiers die in World War II than any war ever in human history.
Right.
We didn't even take Japan seriously in the sense that we knew they couldn't beat us. We put all of our time, money, and effort into Germany. In fact, we created the nuke for the Nazis. We didn't even create it for Japan. The only reason why I used it in Japan is because Japan didn't surrender. But the way the war was fighting, especially with what they saw Japan do, because by 45, we knew about the Bataan Death March and all the atrocities that happened with the Nazis and Japanese. So I don't think there was a sorrow like, damn, we just bombed civilians.
Yeah.
It was more of a, we got to end this war. There's a mini series called Band of Brothers that talk about the paratroopers in Europe. The very last episode, they talk about how they're preparing the soldiers in Europe to join the fighting in Japan. Because no one anticipated Japan surrendering. We all thought we would have to invade, the homeland islands. So it wasn't until the nukes were dropped that Japan surrendered. So it wasn't more of like a, damn, we really just did this. We don't know what we did. It was more of a, Billy finally gets to come home after being overseas for 5 years.
Right, exactly.
Now, in hindsight, and again, Oppenheimer's kind of in the weeds and all the scientists. They know what they're about to do. But, Larry down, at Home Depot, he just wants his son to come home. He's not thinking of,
Totally. Yeah. And I get that. Like, when you're in the thick of it and it's 5 years, and when you're contextualizing it of the time period, it makes sense that it's just sort of like us versus them at that point. And it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, you're up 20 and there's only a minute left to go. It's like, hey, surrender, dude. Like, come on. Like, let's end this. And if they're not going to do that, then, I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying, like, I do understand contextually why they did what they did. It's sad, but it made sense. And it's sad for the people of Japan that their government didn't surrender, because it's always the citizens who suffer in these things,
Sure. I mean, Truman, up until, the very end, they talk about his journal entry, how they think Truman did it to scare the Russians.
Yeah.
Truman was desperate to get the Russians to join the war with Japan, because he thought them joining the war would be like, Japan, you have to surrender, bro. You're about to be at war with 3 different countries, like throw in the towel. And they didn't until they dropped the first nuclear bomb. They still didn't surrender. 3 days went by before they dropped the second. They dropped the second, and there was a large faction of the government that still didn't want to surrender. They almost overthrew the emperor.
Insane.
They're going to overthrow their government to continue the fighting. And it's like, dude, you have no air force. Like, our airplanes would just fly by whenever they wanted, because there was no defense. Like, there's nothing to fight for.
Yeah, right.
It's like being up 28-3. Like, you have to close out the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we were so happy when the Russians invaded Berlin, because we knew the Nazis would continue fighting for nothing, for no reason whatsoever. And it was going to cost a lot of soldiers for no reason. So go ahead, Russia. You could invade Berlin. We'll just watch the silence and cheer you on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the deal was with Japan.
Wow.
Man. Well, Adam, thank you for coming on and giving this little lesson here, man. I mean, this is going to be super knowledgeable and helpful for anyone who wants to watch Oppenheimer. I just before we head out, like, I'm curious. I know we talked a little bit about in the beginning, but do you all think that we're going to see a little bit of that? As what Adam was just mentioning, like, where we get some of the Japan aspect, Germany, or do you think we're going to be solely focused in the United States and just in that room with that team?
I was gonna say, I feel like you have to show like the other stuff too. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like people are just like, for me at least, like I'm not really the big historian, and
Yeah.
you know, this type of stuff, like I'm just like recalling again from like
Totally.
past history classes. So I feel like I need to see that to understand what else is going on, you know, besides
Yeah.
this room of decision making.
Right. I mean, unless they play this video before the movie, like I think a lot of people will be sort of out of it, you know, because like imagine Nolan just is like, all right, we got the professor who's gonna give you a quick 15-minute lesson here, but yeah, it's like I agree, Talia. I think it's weird because it's like it's such an important and large part of history, and like when you're a kid and learning it, it's just like, but there's so much history and so much in the world and so much in our present history right now that is like, it's just a lot of information to take in. So, and that's why I think these films are really important too, is to sort of give people a reminder. Like I just went to the Holocaust Museum and I'm in there and I'm like, you know the magnitude of these 6 million Jews and everyone else who was involved, and it's just to physically see that. I think to physically have this film, even though it's fictional, it will impact a whole generation of children to be like, war is bad, this is not okay, and if possible, always choose peace.
And I also feel like this film, at least, you know, with Interstellar that I think of, like, obviously I love this movie, but like you can just watch it so many times and still learn more, like each time you watch it. And I feel like this movie is going to do the same thing. Like every time you watch it, you're going to learn something new. You're going to see something that you didn't see before. So I'm just waiting for that.
Super excited. All right, that's going to do it. Thank you all for coming on and watching. Make sure you subscribe, and because Tea Time, we're always covering the best movies, and then sometimes you get the professor on here who gives you a beautiful lesson that you can take for you for the rest of your life. But yeah, thank you for all for watching. We'll see you. And Adam, you'll definitely have to come back after we watch this for sure. Give us a little recap, review, and all the facts. All right, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time. And remember, just be you. Peace.